All right, this is the final part. I have 36 minutes, guys. So I'm now going to tackle the holy nature of the holy. What does the Bible really mean when it says when it talks about sin? So let's tackle this topic now. So I get this through your heads, guys. When the Bible talks about sin, when it talks about human beings, Jesus have being sinless, it's talking about his DNA, his holy DNA, obviously. It talks about those with sin. It's talking about those who have the sin corrupt DNA. The deeds have a part to play, as the Bible talks about the horrific deeds, obviously. But the Bible's pretty much making a point because all human beings have Adam's. They come from Adam and Eve, obviously. Adam and Eve supposedly sin, and they all have that corrupt DNA. It's impossible for them to be good because it's a part of their DNA to be wicked people. So I'm saying they can't control. I told you before, you can't control your DNA. It's a part of who you are. It's what makes you you. Jesus has a holy gene. That's why it's impossible for him to live a wicked life for everyone else. Because he took on human flesh, he succumbed to temptations like everyone else, which means everything we went through, he experienced too. But he was good. He was a good man. He was a holy good man compared to everyone else, and he had the holy name of God. So, let's go to John 8:7. Sam knows this verse, obviously. Let's go to John 8:7. It's about the woman who committed adultery, right? What did Jesus mean in that passage when he said, "He who has sin, he who's without sin, casts the first stone"? Is Jesus really talking about their deeds, or is he what he really means is their nature? Let's read the passage. A lot of preachers think it's deeds. I think it's nature, talking about the human nature, obviously. John 8:7. I'm reading for the New King James, guys. Okay, let's read from verse 1. Okay, guys? John 8. But Jesus went to Mount of Olives. Now early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came to him, and he sat down and taught them. Then the scribes and Pharisees brought to him a woman caught in adultery. And when they had seen her in the midst, they said to him, "Teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act." Which means they caught her banging a guy, they caught her like actually banging a guy. The chick was a whore, obviously, right? She was a whore, obviously. She was a whore, obviously. So Sarah, teacher, this woman was caught in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what do you say? Then they said, testing him, that they might have something of which to accuse him, obviously. But Jesus stooped down and wrote on the ground with his finger, as though he did not hear. Obviously. So when they continued asking him, he raised himself up and said to them, let me read this passage very carefully. He who is without sin among you, let him throw the stone at her first. What did Jesus say when he said he was without sin among you? Is he talking? Did Jesus really mean their deeds? Deeds has a part to play, or was Jesus talking about their nature? Okay, all you guys here, obviously, all you guys here, obviously, which one of you guys does not have that sin nature? You guys are all guilty in the eyes of God because you what? You come from Adam's line. You're not whole. You don't have the holy gene like me. Yeah. Let me read again. He raised himself up and said to them, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw the stone at her first." Obviously. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. Then those who heard it, being convicted by their conscience, went out one by one, beginning with the oldest even to the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had raised himself up, and saw no one but the woman, he said to her, "Woman, where are those accusers of yours? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." So, Sarah? Awesome. When Jesus said go and sin no more, is he talking about the deeds there? Yes. When Jesus says go and sin no more, he's talking. Some passages when it talks about sins, it can mean deeds, obviously, but in some other passages it means nature, talking about the DNA, obviously. Jesus said, "He who is without sin among you, let him throw the first stone." All you guys are guilty, man. You all come from Adam, man. You all have that sin DNA. Jesus knows they all have the sin DNA. They're not. They're all wicked people. Yeah. I'll read it again. She said, "No one, Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." Obviously. So notice how Jesus tells the woman, "Go and sin no more." Obviously. Go and sin no more, obviously, but yet that woman still, Jesus did not die on the cross yet. The Holy Spirit did not come upon her yet, and yet Jesus still told her, "Go and sin no more." That's how you know this whole thing about sin has to do with the nature. It's not really the deeds. Deeds has a part to play. Even that makes sense. Why would Jesus say, "Go and sin no more" when he didn't even die on the cross yet? The Holy Spirit didn't come upon her yet, and he told her, "Go and sin no more." Be good. Try your best. Try your best. Don't do this again. But even if you try your best to be good, you can't do it because I didn't die on the cross yet, and you have the sin DNA. I have to die on the cross to save mankind. Obviously, so sorry. Makes sense. Let me continue reading. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, "I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life." Obviously. What does Jesus mean when he says, "I am the light of the world"? He's talking about his goodness, obviously. He's good compared to everyone else. He's the light of the world, obviously. I am the light of the world. I make everyone. I look good compared to everyone else, obviously. He who believes in me shall not see light but see darkness. Talking about they'll be saved and they'll be in heaven, not in hell. Same time they'll be good, they won't be doing. They'll do good, they won't do evil, obviously. So, but I think Jesus here is talking about his DNA, his nature too. Yeah, man, I have the God DNA. What's in my flesh is a source of life. I'm the light of the world. Yeah. Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, "I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life." So if you believe in Jesus, you're going to live a good life. You will walk in light, not in darkness. Obviously. The Pharisees therefore said to him, "You bear witness of yourself. Your witness is not true." Jesus answered and said to them, "Even if I bear witness of myself, my witness is true. For I know where I came from and where I am going, and you do not know where I came from and where I am going. You judge according to the flesh. I judge no one. And yet if I do judge, my judgment is true. For I am not alone, but I am with the Father who sent me. It is also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I am one who bears witness of myself, and the Father who sent me, he bears witness of me." Then they said to him, "Where is your Father?" Jesus answered, "You know neither me nor my Father. If you had known me, you would have known my Father also." Obviously. I'll stop there. So when Jesus said, "Who is without sin among you," was Jesus talking about their deeds, or was he talking about their nature? I think he was talking about their nature. All you guys are all guilty of sin because you all have the corrupt DNA of Adam. You're all wicked people, obviously. Because you have the corrupt DNA of people, you're sinners. You're wicked people. And yet Jesus healed that woman. He told her, "Go and sin no more." And yet he knew that chick was wicked. And she had the sin DNA of Adam. So in that passage when Jesus says, "Go and sin no more," he's telling her, "Don't do it again. Don't do this again." But he knows he still has to save her because she has the corrupt DNA of Adam. Jesus is the one who can take out sins of the world and save the human race. Does that make sense, guys? Sounds out. That makes sense. Yeah. Now let's go to Hebrews 4:15, and I'm done, guys. Let's go to Hebrews. Samuel's a passage, obviously. 4:15. Hebrews 4:15. Let's go to Hebrews 4:15. Okay, let's read. Okay, let's start from verse 9. And we'll read to 15, guys. Okay? And I'm done with the Bible here. All the Christians say, your reels are sick. Yeah. Listen carefully to what I'm saying. I'm going to go deep, guys. I'm sorry. Verse 9. There remains, therefore, a rest for the people of God. For he who has entered his rest has himself are ceased from his works as God did from his. Let us, therefore, be diligent to enter that rest, lest anyone fall according to the same example of disobedience. For the word of God is living and powerful and sharper than a two-edged sword, piercing even to the division of soul and spirit, and of joints and marrow, and is a discerner of the thoughts and intents of the heart. And there is no creature hidden from his sight, but all things are naked and open to the eyes of him whom we must give account. Seeking then that we have a great high priest who has passed through the heavens. Obviously. Jesus came from heaven, obviously. Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. Okay? For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. What does Paul mean when he says this, guys? For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. But it was in all... Yeah. For we do not have a high priest... For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. So Jesus knows exactly what we went through, man. That's what Paul means. Yeah. But was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. What does Paul mean, guys, when he says that? I'll answer that question, guys. Oh, he's talking about deeds, Ivan. I don't think so, man. Let me read this again. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. Jesus sympathizes with the human's weakness because he experienced what we experienced. Everything he went through, but was in all points tempted as we are. What does that mean? He jacked off, he swore, he lied, he drank, yes. Yet without sin. He didn't have the corrupt DNA of Adam. He had the Holy Spirit of God. That's what it means. It's not talking about what? Deeds there. It's talking about temper at all points is talking about his deeds. Yet without sin Paul's talking about his gene. Jesus can sympathize with us because he experienced what he experienced, except he had no sin in him. And he lived a good life, obviously, for everyone else, obviously. So I'm saying, let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. For every high priest taken from among men is appointed for men in things pertaining to God, and he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. What you're reading. He can have compassion on those who are ignorant and going astray, since he himself is also subject to weaknesses. Let me read this again, guys. What does Paul mean when he says that? Let me read this passage again. Let me start from verse 15 again to get to your head, guys. We do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. Jesus sympathizes with human beings. He experienced what he experienced. Yes, supposedly, right? Yeah. But was in all points tempted as we are. He was tempted like we are, like we sinners are, yet without sin. No sin in the DNA. No sin in the gene. So I'm saying? Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. For every high priest taken from among men He's now giving an example. He's comparing the example of Jesus being the high priest to human beings, obviously. For every high priest taken from among men is appointed for men in things pertaining to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifice for sins. He can have compassion on those who are ignorant and going astray, since he himself is also subject to weaknesses. Is Paul talking about Jesus there? I think he is. Because of this, he is required, as for the people, so also for himself, to offer sacrifice for sins. And no man takes this honor to himself, but he who was called by God, just as Aaron was. So also Christ did not glorify himself to become high priest, but it was he who said to him, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." There again, being born again, obviously, right? As he also says in another place, "You are a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek." Sarah? Obviously. Yeah. Paul's saying, yeah, Jesus can sympathize with us because he experienced what we experienced. Yeah. So when Paul says he was tempted at all points as we are, see, if Paul just said he was tempted at all, if Paul said Jesus was tempted but never did a bad deed, then you can make an argument there. But Paul says he was tempted at all points like we are. He's making a connection to the sinners. Everything the sinner, the wicked evil experience, Jesus experienced that too, yet without sin. He's talking about the gene, the holy DNA of God, since they are uncorrupt, pure seed gene of God. Obviously. As he also says in another place, "You are priests forever according to the order of Melchizedek." Verse 7, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to him, who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his godly fear. Obviously. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by things which he suffered. What does that mean when he said he learned obedience, guys? What does that mean? Oh, I don't know what it means, Ivan. Let's read it again to get through your head, guys. Because you guys really piss me off. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience. Are you saying Jesus did some bad things? Yeah, he did, man. He learned obedience, just like I did, obviously, right? He learned obedience, obviously, by things which he suffered. What did Jesus suffer with in his life? He suffered with everything we suffered with, obviously. Lying, drinking, swearing, jacking off, wet dreams. He went through all that, man. Yeah, man, let me read again. Who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to him, who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his godly fear. Though he was a son, so Paul's saying, look, man, even though he was God, he's a son of God, he suffered, he struggled like we did, yeah. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. Christ learned obedience. Yeah. And having been perfected, yeah. Jesus learned obedience through his life. He what? He perfected his obedience to the Father, obviously, Jesus. That doesn't mean he didn't do bad deeds. He did bad deeds. But he learned from his mistakes. He learned obedience, man. The Father was pleased with his life, yeah. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all who obey him, called by God as high priest according to the order of Melchizedek, whom we have much to say and hard to explain, since you have become dull of hearing. Yeah, I'll stop there, guys. Guys, what does Paul mean in this passage when he says, though he was the son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered? What does that mean, guys? Oh, it's talking about his death. No, man, it's a part of it. No, Paul's saying, look, man, though he was the son of God, he struggled like we did, man. He was 10 points like we were, but without sin, he didn't have the corrupt gene of Adam. He had the pure, holy DNA of the Father. Hence why he's sufficient for the sacrifice of the world. Because he has a holy DNA, he lived a good life compared to everyone else. He perfected his obedience to Christ. So I'm saying, so even though Christ suffered in his life, and he was 10 points like we were, he perfected his obedience to the Father. That's why the Father was pleased with him. Perfect life compared to everyone else. But Paul admitted that he suffered like we did, man. Sounds like, I even know, it's talking about his deeds. It's talking, I even know, man, Jesus was completely perfect. He never thought bad thought, he never swore. How can you say, Ivan? Look, man, the Bible says it, man. You can't deny the facts, man. It says it here. Let me read again. Guess your head, guys. Let me read verse 2 again. 5 verse 2. He can have compassion on those who are ignorant and going astray, since he himself is also subject to weaknesses. Yeah. What does that mean? But he was in all points tempted as we are. He's comparing Jesus to us, yet without the sin nature. That's what it means, not the deeds, guys. And then verse 7, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with vehement cries and tears to him, who was able to save him from death, and was heard because of his godly fear. Though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. He learned obedience by his mistakes that he did in his life. And having been perfected, he became the author of eternal salvation to all those who obey him. Yeah. Perfected could mean he perfected his obedience. It could also mean at the moment of resurrection, he perfected himself, obviously. Perfected his body. It could mean that too. But the other passage here, it says, though he was a son, yet he learned obedience by the things which he suffered. What does that mean, guys? I don't know what it means, Ivan. Yeah, you kind of answered the question. Jesus went through everything we through, guys. Yet he did not have the corrupt sin DNA of Adam. He had the DNA of the Father, the holy gene. That's what Paul means. It's not talking about his deeds, guys. You guys are crazy people, yeah, man. I'm saying? Yeah. Why did Paul say he was tempted at all points like we are? Like, the way we're tempted, he was exactly tempted like that too. All these human beings around the world, because the world's wicked and they're sinners, when they're tempted, they do bad things. Jesus was tempted like the human beings were, yet he did not have the sin DNA. That's the difference. He had the holy gene of God. So I'm saying? Whereas they do not have the holy gene of God. They have the wicked, corrupt gene of Adam and Eve. They're wicked people, obviously. Yeah. Yeah. Said Jesus learned obedience. What does that mean? What does that mean, guys? Oh, we don't know what it means either. Yeah, man. Through his sufferings, he learned obedience. Yes. Jesus was tempted at points like we are, but with no sin in his nature. That's what it means. In the one passage, Jesus says, he who's without sin, the adulterer woman, cast the first stone. When Jesus said he who's without sin, was he talking about their deeds or was he talking about their nature? I think he was talking about their deeds, their nature. Which one of you here is not born with sin? You're all guilty. Yeah, I'm the only one who's not born with sin. I'm righteous. I'm righteous in the eyes of God. Obviously. Ivan, why is Jesus righteous in the eyes of God? Because he's pure. His nature is pure. Hence why God looks at him as a righteous man. Obviously, you see what I'm saying? God is the deeds has a part to play, but no. The reason why God looks at Jesus as a righteous man because the Son has his nature. He has a pure holy nature. Well, human beings don't have the pure holy nature. They're wicked people. They have the wicked gene. That's why God does not see them as righteous people. They're wicked people. Whereas Jesus has the righteous DNA, the holy DNA, the holy gene. That's why God sees him as righteous. Because he took on flesh, he was tempered like we were, man. So I'm saying? Sounds live, and that makes sense, but yeah, oh man, like, oh yeah, I'm sick and tired of these effeminate sissies, pastors, and scholars who paint Jesus as a guy who never had a boner, who never lied. No, Jesus went through everything we through. He was 10 out points that we are with no sin. Obviously, I don't know what Sam thinks on this. I don't know what David Wood thinks on this. I don't know what Crefeld Hall thinks on this. I don't know what James White thinks on this. I don't know what all these other what all these apologetics guys think about all these apologetic guys think about this. But I think that when the Bible talks about Jesus being holy, it's talking about his nature, his DNA, the gene. Whereas a lot of pastors they think it's deeds. No, it's the DNA, it's the gene, man. He has the holy gene of the Father. That's what it means. See what I'm saying? Jesus has the holy DNA, the holy gene of the Father. Sorry, guys, this is a Bible video today, guys. I feel like talking about the Bible. Jesus has the holy DNA, the holy gene of the Father. Obviously, that's why the Father sees the Son as a righteous man, because he has the holy gene. It's not because of his deeds. The deeds has a part to play, obviously. Deeds has a part to play. Believe me, I agree. Deeds does have a part to play, obviously. As faith without works is dead, obviously. But what? But the Father sees Jesus as righteous because he has this gene. He has the holy gene of God. When he looks at the Son, he sees pure light, holiness, perfection in the Son. When he sees human beings, he doesn't see perfection. He sees what? Filthiness, because they're tainted with sin. All the human beings are touched. Every human being born supposedly is touched with sin. He sees them as what? He sees them as wicked people, obviously, who deserve to go to hell. Because when the Father looks at them, he doesn't see holiness in them. He sees wickedness and corruption. Yeah. And that's why, you know what I'm saying? And because they have that gene, they're automatically going to live wicked lives. They can't live good lives because they have the wicked corrupt genes. I'm saying? Whereas Jesus, when he sees Jesus, he sees him. When the Father sees Jesus, he sees himself. Because the Son has the Father's DNA. That's why he sees him as his righteous Son. It doesn't mean he didn't do any bad deeds. So I'm saying? Why if Jesus is a bad deed, that's sinning. Yeah, you just context of that. What does sinning really mean in the Bible? You have to answer that question, obviously. If Jesus did a bad deeds in his life and he became flesh, would he be sinning? No, it would not be a sin. The Father would understand because his Son took on human flesh. So I'm saying? But he still lived a good life. Good enough, sufficient for the Father to say, good job, son. I'm saying? Yeah. Never touched a woman. Good compared to everyone else. That's my point. I'm saying. Anyways, guys, I'm tired. Sorry, guys. I was gonna talk about SkySource and a bit about like the girlfriend topic, but I got caught off topic. I want to talk a bit about the girlfriend thing and the Bible. I thought it'd be cool to tackle this topic. Hope you Christians learned from what I said here. If you guys think I'm wrong, look over the passages. I recommend if you want to read John 8:7 and read Hebrews 4:15 all the way to like, I don't know, verse like 21 around there. That's where I read it. Read verse 15 all the way up to like 18, 19, 20 to get an idea what I'm talking about there. Go over the passages. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I think you guys are wrong. When the Bible, if you think Jesus never did a bad deed, you're crazy, man. He was a human being. He did bad deeds. Paul even admitted, man, yeah, Jesus learned obedience. What does that mean? Yeah. He went through everything with you, but compared to everyone else, he was still a righteous man. I'm sorry? He was a righteous man. The Bible calls David a holy prophet. They call what? Yeah. In the Bible, David murdered people, man. The Bible and Jesus quotes David as a holy prophet, man. Yeah, David murdered people. See what I'm saying? You guys have to be consistent in your arguments. Jesus never did one bad deed in his life, Ivan. Okay, well then you're gonna have to condemn him in the Old Testament because he murdered people in the Old Testament. How do you explain that? And yet So he's holy in the New Testament, the Old Testament, and he's still holy, Ivan. Yes, that's my point. Stop playing games, guys. Don't play these games and say Jesus never did a bad deed when the Old Testament he's murdering people, man. He's wiping out nations, wiping out children and women. Yeah. How do you get around that, Ivan? They're wicked people, Ivan. Yeah, he was justified in doing it, obviously. He's still holy. There was the Father, before Church Count here, the Father knew, look, man, if my son takes on human flesh, he will automatically succumb to the human weaknesses and temptations. So the Father understood what Jesus was going through because he was human. Because he's holy, he still passed the test. He still lived a good, holy life. He passed the test. He lived a holy, good life for everyone else. Good life, obviously. But he learned obedience. He did some bad deeds in life, obviously. He did a lot of bad deeds in life, obviously. My point is, compared to everyone else, Jesus looks good. He looks righteous. Just like when you compare me to all the people in the world, I look good, man. I'm a holy, good man. Yeah. When you compare me to the stepfamilies, when you compare me to VJ, I look so righteous. That's my point. That's what it means when Jesus was a holy man. He looks good compared to anyone else, but he still struggled with the temptations in life. That's my point, Samsara. And he was obedient to the Father, obviously. But he struggled. He learned obedience. That's what Paul says, yeah. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video with the Bible. I hope I challenge you guys. If I'm wrong, then refute me. Obviously, I'm not infallible. I can make errors. Stay tuned for more videos, guys. I remember I'm signing off. Peace, guys. Bye.